Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcasts. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. If you're watching today, you can see the press room behind me. I kind of did this prediction from the Bears game too, but this is the press room. It's all behind me, and this is where we do all our interviews, etc. Anyways, you can also read my work on ESPN.com. And I have a story up now just kind of looking at the Commanders' struggles, what lies ahead, and why they still remain optimistic about being able to break out of this little skid. Now, I'll tell you what, man, it all starts with number 14, Sam Howell. I think Howell gives them a different level of optimism that not only could they dig out of this hole or this little 2 and 3 hole, but sustain it because of the quality of play they feel they're getting from the quarterback position. Now, they just have to go out and do it. Otherwise, big trouble lies ahead. Anyways, also at the end of this, I am going to play you a quick interview that I had with corner Benjamin St Juste, just a little bit about like some of the secondary issues. And he does a pretty good job of explaining the big play he gave up last week and the difference between what leads from a very good defensive play to a very not so good defensive play and the things that he learned from that and just like what some of the secondary issues have been going on. But I think you go back to that DJ Moore play. Anyways, he's really good with that. So I wanted to play that for you today, only about 4 or 5 minutes. So give that a listen at the end of my keys and predictions to this game. A couple quick things on the injury front. Cornerback Christian Holmes was ruled out. Not a big surprise, hasn't practiced week, has a hamstring injury. While that's not a huge blow to the defense, it is a blow because he's a very good gunner and they've had some trouble in the punt coverage. And so what you're doing is you're also losing, by losing Jeremy Reeves and also Derek Forrest, you're also taking other guys out of the equation for maybe some special teams reps. And that could impact it. I don't know what they're going to do at those positions or how much will Quan Martin still do. You figure he'll still do a lot. He's had some issues as a gunner, but losing Christian Holmes, I think is a big deal for that particular unit. So they're going to have to make sure they do a good job covering and making sure that doesn't result in big plays for the Falcons. Also, anyway, that's it. Actually, one more thing. Don't know yet what's going to happen with Emmanuel Forbes, if he's going to play as much or if Danny Johnson's going to play. I know at one point earlier this week, I would have said that Danny Johnson will play more. I don't know where it's going to go, but do not be surprised if that's the case as they continue to have to kind of build up Emmanuel Forbes on one portion, but also know that he's got to get better to get back out there. And that's just with technique. The kid can do it. It's consistent technique. That's it. And yes, experience matters, but you don't want it to cost you games while he's learning it. And that's where that's what they're fighting now. Anyway, on to the keys and predictions. And again, stay tuned at the end of it for Benjamin St Juste. Also, don't forget, I'll be back after the game, wrapping up the Commanders Falcons game. So give that a listen Sunday night. So let's get to the keys. First key for the D-line, show up. You've got to show up. This is where your talent is. And the whole do your job mantra this week, who do you think that's targeted at? This is all about the defensive line, not all, but it's a lot about the defensive line because everything, especially defensively, starts with them. So if you have, a lot of focus has been on Chase Young, freelances, this and that. Okay, he does some. Yes, we've seen that. But if you only think if you think he's the only guy doing it, you're crazy. That's why they have the do your job mantra. If it was one guy, they could probably live with that in a different way. It's not one guy. All 4 of those guys have been doing it. They're getting back into bad habits that they started a couple of years ago. Do not blame Chase Young. Chase Young had a really good game against the Bears. Yeah, sure he does it. But so does John Allen, so does Deron Payne, and so does Montez Sweat. If they don't change their habits, this defense is going to be up and down all season. This is where the strength of their team is supposed to lie. If they're inconsistent, the rest of the defense will be inconsistent because it does start with them. And no group to me gets off track more than that because that's where the talent is. So it's noticeable when they're not doing certain things And again, it's all of them. It's all of them. It's as a group. If it was just one, we would not see the do your job signs on the door. Again, there's other groups in this team. Everybody can do that. I could point to plays by the secondary, the linebackers, the receivers, the quarterback, the O-line, the running backs. Everybody's got something where you could say, I tried to do too much on this play instead of just doing my job, and it led to a big play. But I think the biggest group that does that is the D-line. Sometimes I wonder too, we all know they have 4 number 1 picks up there. You see like in a basketball team, for example, you can't have 5 scores. You can't have 5 alpha males out there because then something gets out of whack. And sometimes you need the garbage pail guys, right? The guys who just like, hey, I know what I'm here for. Whereas you have 4 of these guys, and this is part of their mindset, right? And this is why they're going to get paid big money, and 2 already have. It's because they can create big plays. They know how to make big plays. And they know like, hey, if I see this, I can go get this. The problem is when they don't get it, it leads to a big play if others aren't ready for it. But you wonder, like, sometimes could you have I don't want to say too much talent. You always want talent, but sometimes you need those lunch pail guys alongside there who just don't give a crap about making a play and just want to do the play, their play. And that's it. And again, with this group, they know they can make big plays, and they have, but they don't have to justify the salary. They don't have to play for the money because, especially like with the Payne and Allen, they've been paid. They were paid because of what they were doing before. And so when you get off track a little bit, you need to go back to who you are, what got you to this point, and that's what this group has to do. And so, what this does too is it leaves others in a bad spot, and especially against the Falcons run game, it could lead to a lot of guys being in a bad spot. And I'll give you a little example. On that 34-yard run against Chicago, I think it was 34-yard run against Chicago last week. Well, you end up with 2 guys in one gap, and Cody Barton is behind Montez Sweat in the same gap. Not supposed to be like that. Montez Sweat gets moved out of the gap. It's a little stunt. And if you play it right, you got the middle covered, you force him to bounce, and you got a guy there. That should have been a tackle for a loss if they played it right, but they didn't. So you end up with 2 guys in one gap. Makes the linebacker certainly look bad, doesn't it? Now, this is why they're going to defend Cody Barton at times. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and defend him, but I'm going to point out what happens when the D-line maybe gets off kilter and the result. Now, the problem with Barton is at this point, he does think a little bit too much, but the other thing is he's having to learn the defense, but also learning how to play off this front. So you have to be able to play off these guys. So not only you have to know your job, but like, okay, if you see, player X doing this, now you know that you're going to have to fill this gap over here instead of the gap over here where he's now at. So that's part of the thing that this defense is going through with the linebackers. I'm not saying they're playing great, but I'm just saying there's more to the story than I think that most people realize. And everything is interconnected in this game. If this group does this, then this group does that. And that's where you can get off track a little bit. And I think that's gone on here. And again, we all know, like, there are times where Barton needs to think a little bit, just play faster. And even when you see it, you've got to play faster. I get that. But there are other times where the D-line has to do their job to let the linebackers fill where they're supposed to be and not have to guess where this guy's going to be. So now you have to fill over here, etc. Play as a unit, and then things go better. And please understand what I'm saying when I'm talking about that, but it's why they're not going to come out here and just crush a Cody Barton, because the feeling is right now is that it all starts up front. That front does its job. And then I think then everything else falls into place, everything else. So, and again, we all know Cody Barton can play better, but that's part of the transition he's going through, is not just learning the D, but learning the guys in front of him and then playing off of them. And can he do that? Yeah, well, clearly it hasn't been successful, because if he was at a certain point where this defense a little bit better, or the guys in front of you better, maybe that 34-yard run is negated because you play, okay, I see this happening, now I got to get over here. That's the key for Barton now, to get to that level. Can he get there? I don't know. You can make your own guess on that one. This motto is all focused on the D-line, baby. If they do their job, then this team has a chance to walk out of Atlanta with a 3-3 record. And I do think that's a big key for them. Number 2, make Ridder beat you. Yeah, quarterback Desmond Ridder. So to make him beat you, that means you have to stop Bijan Robinson in particular. So that's going to be the big key. And so a couple numbers, Bijan Robinson has 67 carries, almost half his carries, I think it's 30, are for 5 yards or more, and 13 for 10 yards or more. Like 32, almost half of them are for 3 yards or less. So there's been a definite amount of success for teams against him. And then also, but he's got the ability to make some big plays. Now, he's not getting a lot of longer runs. He's had a couple of them, but usually if it's 10, it's 10 to 15 in that range. So he's not killing teams with that, but he can. And we've seen what's happened with this group. Now, most of the big plays that Washington has given up, the 25 plus, have been through the air. And that's typically how it's going to go, but they've only given up a couple of runs like that, which is too many, but they have. But most of it's through the air because that's where teams have been hurting them. So we need to pay attention to that this week too. A common thread, I think, with Robinson, a very talented runner, very talented, can be very patient. They'll use him on a lot of different things. You're going to see the counters. You're going to see some crack tosses. You're going to see some gap scheme or whatever. So like they use him in a lot of different ways, and he's very effective, especially on some of those counters and runs where it requires a little bit of patience. Let him read and then hit, because he's really, really good like that. And then he gets you flowing and then he hits. And I think he'll run out of I formation with the fullback leading him. So big key here. A big key is for those ends to make sure they get upfield and set a very strong edge, prevent them from being able to stretch it out, keep it contained in the box. Then you've got a chance to limit those runs, because if I'm telling you, man, if he starts controlling the game and gets some long runs early, it's going to be a long day for this defense again. And you don't want to, I like this Falcons defense. So I don't think that this team can afford to fall behind against a team that can run the ball, wants to run the ball, and play really good D. You fall behind in this game, it's going to be hard to make it up. And I think that's why they need, getting off to a fast start is always a big key, right? In every game, but it's going to be important that you can't fall behind, certainly by a double-digit deficit against this group, because they'll just run it and they'll keep the clock if you're not stopping the run, and this defense is good, and it'll be a wrap. But again, those DNs have to get upfield. Then a couple of times, this is where we go back to Barton and Davis. And this is where he starts to think too much. And he can't do that here, because they're going to double team the tackles and they'll bring some fullback pulling action, right? You've got to get up in the hole and meet. Where's he meeting the fullback? Pay attention to that. So if he's meeting the fullback 2 yards downfield, forget about it. Bijan's got 10 yards on that play. But if you're meeting the fullback up in the hole at the line of scrimmage, or even just behind the line of scrimmage, now you have a chance to limit that run, create a tighter box, or create a tighter area for him to cut through. Because then you see that, like on the play I saw this against Houston, I think it was, where the linebacker's a little bit slow to fill the hole. Meets the fullback about 2 yards downfield. Well, now you have a much wider area for Bijan Robinson to cut, creates an arm tackle. If you get up in the hole and if you get up to the line of scrimmage, you're forcing it to a cutback to a guy right there. So instead of an arm tackle, now you're able to kind of hit the guy, maybe possibly wrap him, and it turns it into a 2-yard gain versus 11-yard gain. But that's where Barton cannot sit there and think, if the D tackle's got a double team, get your butt in the hole and take on the lead blocker at the line of scrimmage, a yard deep, wherever. But that's what you've got to do, and that's where he's got to do it. I'm not going to give many excuses on that one, because that's what the big key is. Then and then obviously the safeties have to help fill. You can't, everybody's going to be involved in that, but it starts with that front six, right, or front seven. However they do it, maybe they play that Cinco package, because maybe It's not always. It's funny because the Eagles run a lot, but the Eagles are a different run team. And they used to run that Cinco against them. They haven't been doing that the last couple of years because it's been more effective the way they've been doing it. I'll be curious to see how they do it with this group, if they continue that, or, do you want to create some one-on-ones for your linemen to prevent those double teams and get them going? So we'll see on that one. I don't know about that yet. So if you can limit Bijan Robinson, control him, right? They've given up some big runs, but like against Philly, they controlled DeAndre Swift. You cannot let Bijan Robinson take control of this game. Get it back to Desmond Ridder, because he's at best, I think he's a pedestrian quarterback. Maybe he's going to be a guy who's a future backup, but I don't think we can look and say like, oh, this guy's really got it going. Shoot, it sounded like, going into last week, if he doesn't have a good game, you would have would you have started to hear some whispers about our old pal, Taylor Heineke, right? So, we'll see. But I mean, Ritter actually played a decent game against Houston last week. And there are things they can do with this offense with him at quarterback, but he's not going to threaten. He's a one-dimensional quarterback because he's not going to beat you with his legs. A lot of good intangibles. That's why he was drafted where he was in the third round. I just don't think that he's a long-term answer for them at quarterback. And I think that's why you need to put this game on him. He does like to check it down. He's going to check that one read. He's going to check it down. Bijan Robinson there too. In the open space, man, you've got to tackle that guy because he routinely makes the first guy miss. And a big key in this game too, and I go back to the Bijan stuff, is the yards before contact. If they're getting Bijan close to line, there have been a couple of games where he's been less successful. And I think even last week it wasn't great. And a couple weeks ago against Detroit, where the yards before contact were very, very low. That's when you're going to have success with him. So you've got to you got to get him quick, because if not, you give him a whole cut and he's going to get 10 to 12 yards. Also with their passing game, you look at what they did last week. Drake London finally was a bigger factor in their pass game. And, I think Kyle Pitts has become because he's staying healthy, will become a bigger threat for them. My colleague for ESPN, Michael Rothstein, wrote a good article about where Kyle Pitts is getting the ball lately and how they're using him more in the slot and split out wide versus at tight end like they were last year, and how that maybe is opening some things up for him. So you obviously have to be aware of him. You got Cam Curl going to be able to cover him. You got Drake London, who was a threat downfield last week. I think he had I know they're going to target him down there, especially against this defense. Man, I would test their rules. Like, if you think they're having some trouble with the zone match stuff, test their butts, right? So they're going to get tested. You're going to have Quan Martin and Percy Butler in their time, two young safeties. They're going to test them, and depending then, this is why you may go with Danny Johnson, because if you have Butler and Quan Martin, could you really afford to have a third young guy out there? Because how does that then impact? Now, I don't know, like Forbes, Martin, and Butler would be on the field at the same time, because that would be a 6D back package. In a 5D back setting, it would be Butler and Cam Curl, and then 3 corners, or 3 safeties and 2 corners. So just keep that in mind. But I do think if I'm Atlanta, I'm testing them, test their rules, etc., and test their zone match principles, or if they're going man, test them just to see, because they've been giving up way too many big plays. So, but Drake London down the field, you will see Ritter take a couple shots down the field, not always successful, but I do think you're going to see that. And it's a matter of, can you make him throw? Can you pressure him into a bad throw? There are sometimes I don't think he anticipates well through an interception against Jacksonville, where he's got a receiver breaking open over the middle of the field. And I mean, it's an easy pitch and it's an easy pitch and catch. Not a good misstep there. Easy pitch and catch, but because of because he waits till he's open, ends up getting picked by the backside safety. It should not have happened. So if you can get him into those kind of situations, then I think you can have some success against him. Atlanta O-line. Oh, by the way, so one of the other things is he's been sacked 16 times. So he's in that top part of quarterbacks getting sacked, not as much as Sam Howell, but he's been sacked a lot. Not last week against Houston. So maybe they figured something out with him, but also his average time to sack is one of the worst in the NFL. I think only a couple quarterbacks have a slow or quicker time to getting sacked. So just keep that in mind. There have been quick pressure, and I think you can get that here as well with this front. But the line, the coverage has to hold up to get him there. But man, the opportunities there. The Atlanta O-line entered this season with a very good reputation, has not played out that way. I don't know all the reasons why. Some of it could be on the quarterback. Some of it could be they're getting beat in some cases. It's all of that, perhaps. But all I know is there's a chance to take advantage of this, because Ritter is just a very pedestrian quarterback, and make him beat you. And so I think, you can you can, that's what you have to do. And then going back to the Washington Bees, they're going to have to pay attention to their details. And I'm going to get into details in a minute for the offense. But so the last couple of weeks, they played a lot of man, more heavy man than they I think they want to play. Some of that was because of the RPOs, like against Philly. Chicago doesn't run that as much. So will they do it as much against Atlanta? I don't know. I also think that some of it is that you look at earlier in the year, there were some missteps with their zone match stuff. So that was also part of the reason. Then you hope, if you're playing more man, you're hoping to maybe give the line a little bit more time to get there, but it wasn't happening. So, there are a few things going on with that. So I'll be curious to see what they do there. But, to me, I'd still go back to a little bit more zone, because that's what they had been good at. But then it comes down to communication, seeing things the right way, playing your principles right. Like Percy Butler against Chicago had one cover two, where it's like, dude, just play it right and you're fine, because you have the speed, you have the vision in good shape. But when you take away that vision, then you put yourself in a worse spot. So that's another key. And let's see. Well, last key for this week is patience and details. And that goes back to the offense. And because both of them matter. And I say patience because Atlanta is one of the best defenses, and especially against the run in the NFL. They don't give up big plays. They're 12th in yards per carry, 15th in yards per game. So not great numbers, but the yards per carry are very good. So if you're not patient, they can get you out of it. And then if you fall behind, they're really going to get you out of it. So that's where you can, they can get you in their defensive front. They're going to play to stop that run. Their safeties are very aggressive. Use that against them, and I'll get to that in a minute. They've only allowed 6 plays of 25 yards or more, compared to, for example, 18 by Washington. So long drives, don't turn it over. That's a big key every week, right? But you can't put yourself behind the chains. So just if you're patience by, hey, 3 yards on first down run, 2nd and 7, you're okay. Stay ahead of the chains, and that will get you there. 2 yards, 1 yard, now you're putting yourself in a hole, and you do not want that. But be patient and be okay with some of those 3-yard runs to not put you you just possess the ball, keep it, and look for your openings. Their linebackers will focus on stopping the run. You have Grady Jarrett and Calais Campbell up front of the line. Both those dudes can still play, and so I think, are they elite anymore? Maybe not, but they're still very effective. And against this group, I think you can be very effective with it. So I'll be curious to see how Calais Campbell, which side is he going to rush from? They'll both move around. If he's, see how he is against Andrew Wiley, who is not, does he always handle the bull rush as well? Well, that's been an issue. So you're going up against a big dude in Campbell. So that's going to be something to watch there. Jesse Bates, the safety, very aggressive. But again, use that against them. Some play action, some misdirection, get their eyes fooled. The Atlanta offense will do that as well. So do that to them. Test that, right? Get some motion and get them going a little bit differently, and fool the eyes a little bit, or just not even fool them, but just get them to bite on something, because they are going to be aggressive. So that's one thing there. That puts them in stressful spots. Their cornerbacks, AJ Terrell and Jeff Okudah, very aggressive. Both like to play press man. And, the Atlanta plays a lot of press. So getting off the line is going to be key for the receivers. That goes back to some of the details. And I think the team is well aware of how often, like especially on third down, they're going to try and send some pressure, and they're going to use a lot of press in that situation. Alford, their slot corner, can be a pretty good slot corner, but what I've noticed is where you can get him is if you're going to get him on a choice route, or you get something where you kind of get up to him and kind of boom, 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 and then go. His feet are patient. He's probably going to have success there. But to me, it's like, if you watch some of the success people have had against him, Jahan Dotson could be one of those guys where you get up the field, a good stem plant cut, but it's got to be quick, right? So I think that's where you can get him a little bit in that situation, and perhaps get a big play out of that in the middle of the field, which is where you want to get to. That's another thing. And then I think, if Atlanta does not record a lot of sacks, however, neither did the Bears. The Falcons only have 5 in 5 games. But when you watch them, they're certainly close to them. They do a good job of forcing you to either get the ball out. So if Howell's not getting the ball out, you could have some problems. You could see that sack total get added to for Howell. So one of the things they do well is the overload blitzes, and this team has had some issues against them. So how can you combat that? Well, one of the things when you watch the Falcons, you can see right before the snap, you start to see guys creep a little bit. So it's not just, there's going to be a tell there. There's going to be a little bit of a clue there. So you're going to see them inch up just at the last minute, right? But the quarterback in the center, if they see that, then they're coming. So now you either got to get rid of the ball, or, and at that point, it's going to be too late to change protections. So maybe if somebody sees it at the last minute, you can adjust knowing what else is going on. But it really would be on the quarterback to know, I got to get rid of the ball right now. And you have a chance for a big play if you do that. That, I think another way to handle that is through cadence, changing up the cadence a little bit, maybe getting a hard count to see if they can jump a little bit to anticipate what they might do. So look for that. That's some of the game within the game that I think is always interesting, but that's something that I think that could be big for them, is just a little bit of a clue and a little bit of a tell to get them in some stressful situations or to combat what they want to do. I think that's a big thing. That's a detail thing as well. And then I think finally with the details, it's also about the routes. And I think there are a couple of times you look back at the Bears game, for example, and a couple of routes that I think it's a detail thing. So if you remember the Jahan Dotson play late in the game, it's 30-20, and Sam Howell misses them on a deep corner. And you look and say, oh, Sam's late on that play, because that was my first thought. And then you look at it again and you see, and you're talking to people here, that Jahan, I think part of the reason why Howell is late, because I don't think they saw it the same way. And in that play, Dotson's job is this is just a details thing. And some of the things are getting used to the system and how you want to do it in relation to the guy next to you. Some of it is just remember, when you see this, you do this. And so if you're, when do you flatten the route versus when do you keep it up? If he turns it up, you have a touchdown there. And if you flatten it out, now the timing is off and now everything is off. And so now it ends up to be a catch out of bounds and a wasted opportunity. Little details like that are what helps an offense improve. So, and Jahan's a very good route runner. I have every confidence that if they want to attack him against Alford, I think they'll have success. So, and then another one was even on the interception to that at the end of the first half with where Howell targets Curtis Samuel. This is something that, if you go back and watch, like when Jordan Reed was here, they would talk to him about when he was like matched up against a defensive back in the slot, for example. And he would sometimes, he wasn't having success because he wasn't pressing the leverage enough. He wasn't threatening him to get down the field. And I think in those kind of situations, if you, like for Samuel, he's got wide open middle, but press the leverage more, create that separation, create the thought in their minds that you're going to go downfield. And that one he didn't. So if you do little things like that, that middle will be open for you. So pay attention to all that this week. I know I gave you a lot, but that's all that's going on. It's like, this is all based on studying, watching a bunch of the Falcons film and talking to people here and other people just to get a feel for it. So that's where I get that's where my keys come from. It's not just like looking at numbers, it's looking at everything, trying to give you the best picture I can. And hopefully this helps with your insight. Anyway, now for my prediction. So all this to me is with this team is, how do you respond to a horrible, horrible game? They did not, they responded to a really ugly game against Buffalo with a really good one on the road against Philadelphia. I still think this team can respond. So I'm still going to I'm going to roll with them for another week and just see. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that was just a really, really bad game where they came out with no gas for whatever reason, unforgivable, but that did it shock them enough into the do your job mantra. And while that might be a silly little phrase, it's not the phrase. I don't give a crap about what's on the locker room door. It's more, what is the emphasis, and getting back to that. If you do that, you'll have success. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they're going to do that this week. 17-16 Washington. Now for a bold prediction, how about this? Maybe I'll do this every week. I'm going to say that Chase Young will have at least one sack, and then either another sack where he makes a big play out of it or causes a big play because of his pressure. So, and that's going to be the difference in this game. So you heard it here first. Anyway, that's it for me. Again, stay tuned now for my quick interview with Washington corner Benjamin St Juste. I think you'll like it. It was to me, it was informative. He always gives good insight. curious about, like, for you guys, like, you guys obviously have made a lot of plays in the past as a secondary, right? And so, like, sometimes, like, you know, if you're giving some up, what's the difference between giving one up and then making one? Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you're like you give up this, you get this. What's the difference between making one and giving one up?
Being at the right place at the right time. Honestly, there's not much that needs to be changed when you make a play. You know, like when you're going for the ball, it's a matter of inches. Sometimes it's a matter of like a small detail. You forgot about this a certain play. Like if I take for example mine on that first play that I gave up to DJ Moore. I had great leverage. I had great coverage. I jumped something that I shouldn't jump. I saw him make a little double move, and we were playing a certain coverage that I had help on the inside. So I should have just stayed outside and stayed on top, and honestly, it would have either been a sack or I would have made the play. So this is kind of like the difference, just the small details, just being disciplined at what you need to do. And if they tell you to stay on top and stay outside, then this is where you can make your play. When you're trying to do something else different, you're trying to do it your way, you're like, maybe he's going to go inside, let me go inside, and that was somebody else's play. That was a safety coming down that was going to make the play. So I would say that's the difference.
So you know all that, right? So but you can know all that, but how hard is it to process it sometimes to make sure that you do that? Do you know what I mean? 'Cause, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you know that and you can tell you afterwards, but in the heat of the moment, how hard is it to always do that?
You have to be perfect for 75 plus snaps. So that's who's going to win the game. At each and every single position, you have a job. They might give you a look that's different than what you saw in practice. It doesn't matter that it's different. You need to process that as fast as possible in the span of 3 seconds and be perfect for 75 plus players, and that's how you're going to make every single play. Not everyone is going to do that. Nobody's perfect, but the guys that are great are able to do it at a pretty consistent basis.
So when you go back after a game like that, for just that one play, what do you tell yourself during the week to make sure it doesn't happen again, or is just say, hey, it's just a reminder that like they say, do your job? Is that all it is, or is there something more?
Do your job. If I stay outside, stay on top, and DJ Moore goes up there and makes a great play, it is what it is. He gets paid just like I get paid. Mm-hmm. But if I jump something that wasn't there, he makes a play, then that's on me for not being disciplined. So that's the difference between making a lot of plays and making a little bit less plays. Like if I take, for example, the play where Kendall undercutted the route.
Right.
That was not a good ball. Like if you, as a quarterback, it was a high ball. High ball.
It was a bad throw.
He touched it, and the receiver ended up catching it and scoring for all. But like that, he's in the right place at the right time. He made a play. The guy gets paid just like Kendall gets paid. It is what it is. But if Kendall would have came down and I don't know, he would have jumped way early, and DJ would have came and ran by him, and his job was to stay on top. Now we would have said, you're not at the right place, you're not at the right time, you're not doing your job. You need to do your job first.
So like with Emmanuel, do you talk to him after? Because obviously it's tough as a corner to come in this league. So what do you talk to him? Do you tell him what are little things that maybe you guys can help him with?
Oh, you just gotta stay up. He's such a young guy, young career. He played 4 games. Things are gonna happen. I remember when I first got here, I played my first game as a starter. Didn't go well. I gave up a touchdown. I gave up game-winning back shoulder. And now I'm here. I made progress. I'm getting better. I'm in a better position. So it's all part of the process. People just want to see if you're gonna bounce back up. Are you gonna crumble under the pressure? And the stuff that you didn't do pretty well in the game, or you're gonna rise to the occasion and be like, you know what, this stuff is in the past, and let me get better and work on myself.
What does Atlanta's passing game? What kind of challenges do they pose, like with Drake London and Kyle Pitts? I mean, I don't know how you guys defend him, but like, what kind of challenges do they pose?
A lot of versatility and gadget guys. You know what I'm saying? Like they got Cordero Patterson also that can be used as a running back receiver. They do a lot of motion shift. Trying to attract your attention to different things. So you have to stay focused on doing our job consistently every play. And I think that the most disciplined the team's going to win. They have big receivers, they have big tight ends, so we're going to have to be physical. It's going to be a physical game, but at the end of the day, I think the main theme is going to be who's going to be more disciplined for those 75 plus plays.
Cool.
Perfection.
Not easy.
Not easy, but that's what we chase.
After the game on Sunday, I'll be back with the wrap-up of the Falcons-Commanders game. So I'll talk to you next time.